privilege to now introduce Shanil. I hope that's pronounced correctly. How are you? Shanil is with IRD, he's a senior member of the IRD team. We're also going to be joined by Karen Dawson, to my right, from MSD, a senior procurement specialist, and also from Patrick, who's coming down now, down the aisle. It's like marriage, really, isn't it? He's with Health New Zealand and the shared digital record for health. So please welcome them as they come seated here. And Steve, of course, the consummate fighter pilot, who's going to facilitate. So thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, just checking. You can hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you. The panel have already been introduced. We've only got 30 minutes, and I've promised that I'm going to ask really, really complicated and deep questions, not the ones I shared with you earlier. We're very, very lucky, actually. This morning, I think mainly we've been talking about transformation in the abstract. Future plans, culture change, what we need to do. We have 3 panelists here who have lived it, are living it, and actually are preparing to live it. Although, Karen, I know you're a little bit more advanced than that. And what I'd like to do is to take each one of those individually, and then we'll have a joint session right at the end. So maybe if I can start with Shanil. Shanil, IR's Business Transformation project is often cited as a reference point for other agencies on how to do things, partly because of its scale and its term, which I think was about 7 years. So highly complex, lots of moving parts. So with the freedom of hindsight, if you were to look back, Shanil, what are the 2 or 3 key lessons that you think other agencies should perhaps take notice of from that transformation program?
Cool. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to come and join the panel. I think there's, so first off, I think I'd touch on the team. The team is what is really key. And I think it's just understanding what your strengths are, who you have on board already and what their strengths are. And then really thinking about, who do you want to bring into the team, both internally. So, who are the experts who have done this before, who have the right experience, bringing them on board. And then, really importantly, who are the partners you want to join along the way. So I think that's one of the key things that we did at the outset of BT that sort of, stood the test of time and, served us really well. The second thing I think would be really good hygiene, both project and program hygiene. I think sometimes doing the basics well, it's sort of somewhat gets superseded by the excitement of what your outcome that you're chasing is. Our old program, like the DC of transformation, used to say, "You're only as good as your last change." And that's not a negative. It's just, doing the right things, putting the right building blocks in place to ensure you're doing the right things so that, things like governance, how do you add value to governance and the conversations and the perspectives you kind of bring in governance by doing those right hygiene steps. The last one, I think, is sort of around learning and evolving. Some of you will know, we started off with 4 stages, implemented stage 1, didn't go so well, learned a lot. 4 stages became 6 different releases. We pushed out the timeline slightly, rephased the sequencing of the program. And that's really kind of show of, if you don't actually test your assumptions, learn along the way and actually adapt, then you're just kind of going to chart a course that might not prove to be successful in the end run. So,
those are great points. I wonder if you could comment on the sort of utility of separating business transformation from legacy or heritage. They were run as two quite separate organisations within the organisation. Did that help?
Absolutely. I think we put equal emphasis on the new, but also how do we coexist whilst we're building the new with our heritage platforms. We had equally large teams kind of across both, and real kind of emphasis across both the customer experience and what does the consistency of the customer experience kind of look like. But then, underneath, what does the system architectures kind of need to look like across both as well. So that was a real key emphasis for us, kind of at the outset, all the way through.
And what would you put down as one of the key factors that enabled you to weather the program going off the rails slightly in phase one? I mean, obviously, no program is perfect from day one. So what was the resilience? How did that work out?
And I'm not kind of underplaying this, but it's kind of being like the exec team leader-led. So all the way from the commissioner all the way kind of through the organisation, there was real clarity in sort of why we needed to make this change. What outcomes were we after, and sort of the journey that needed to kind of get us there. And none of the the exec team are here, so I haven't been, I'm not placating anyone, but that's kind of like the real test, quite a lot of programs and stuff which are massively large scale, kind of go off kilter when there's not that kind of backing from the exec team, all the way through the organisation.
Oh, thank you for that. So IR is the system lead for service transformation as part of the new structure. Are you able to share any of the things that you are currently doing or planning to do?
Yeah, I mean, so Brian sort of touched on it. So the public service transformation program has been stood up. Our commissioner is sort of leading that program of work. We've had a number of senior leaders who have been through our business transformation program, who have actually stepped out of their day jobs to actually lead parts of that work as well. I think more on the ground level, with business transformation, we sort of led with a whole bunch of policy change, which meant we have a lot more information and more kind of current information. So, over the last few years, we've been, sort of doing quite a lot of work in sort of, how other agencies could take advantage of that. I think there's a session with the ACC tomorrow at the conference. We're doing a bit of work with MSD at the moment around, how we can share income information to make more accurate payments in MSD. And also, our Find My ID number service has just gone live with gov.nz app. And we'll continue to talk to GDDA around, how we could support.
Shanil, thank you. And from someone who's got the luxury of hindsight, maybe to somebody now who's living the pain on a daily basis. And I'm sure you're not living the pain, Patrick. Okay. But Patrick, you're part of a large program of work, and you're focused on one particular area at the moment. How do you keep sight on achieving the short-term goal without losing the long-term goal? Because no doubt you're having to make decisions along the way.
Yeah. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you for having me. So I work on the Shared Digital Health Record, which is one of the pieces of work under the Primary Care Tactical Action Plan, which was some money that was allocated towards improving access to primary care services and making it so that it's easier to get an appointment and that kind of thing. So the work that we're doing is really around making access to information more available to improve the likelihood that when you see your clinician, it's they've got access to the data that they need in order to give you good care, so that you don't have to keep coming back and back again. I guess one of the things with the PCTAP program more generally is it covers quite a range of different say, initiatives to try and improve that access. So digital is one of those things, and in fact, it's probably one of the smaller parts of that. A lot of it is to do with improving access to staff, creating incentives to get people in and support training. The thing for us, though, I guess from in the work that we're doing within the digital team is you can only do good work when you've got the right enablers there in place to make that happen, right? And the access to data seems the irony of this project is when you talk to people, they go, if I turn up to hospital, does that hospital doctor not see my record? Is that not a thing that they already have? And you say, yeah, that's not true across the country. It happens regionally to some extent. And so fixing those kinds of underlying problems then allow you to then focus on what that target state needs to be and how that target state can develop. And it's really easy to get caught up in the problems that are right in front of you. There's plenty of those right now, for sure. We try and through our governance forums, we've got regular reviews on what it is that we're trying to achieve, what those targets are, when are we trying to aim towards those, how are we tracking against that, particularly what are the risks that are going to stop us from getting there, and how are we actively going to manage those in the short term, and then what are the things that we need to change, in the longer term to get there. But in a large program, it's hard. I think, as mentioned before, having the right people in place to be able to identify when those opportunities are coming, where the challenges might be, is really important. Otherwise, you get teams that are siloed, working on their own problem, solving their own challenges, which is, they need to do that work. But you miss the opportunity to make sure that the thing you do over here can help the thing over there, and then you can be more efficient on the target state at the end. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is there a framework or a methodology that you guys utilise to enable you to keep on the straight and narrow, and to put some structure and some context around what you're doing?
That was one of those. I reflecting on that question earlier. Health New Zealand as an organisation is quite interesting because we've been through a couple of pretty significant restructures in the last little while. Now I'm a contractor in Health New Zealand, so I haven't felt the change of that restructure nearly as much as some of the more permanent staff have, and that's really it's quite unsettling for a lot of people to go through and sort of work out, what is my job, what am I supposed to be doing. A lot of people who were in one role got transitioned into another role, and how do they let go of what they used to do and bring it forward? And so a lot of the practices that we did have in previous structures have kind of been lost as we've moved through that new structure. And so particularly for our project, we've been trying to work on how do we establish some of those new patterns and new ways of working as we've gone into this year and sort of the end of last. It's not perfect by any stretch. One of the challenges is kind of, you've got you can have a sort of product methodology for how you deliver services like this. So thinking about what's the outcome, what's the value you're creating, who is your customer, who is your patient, who is your person that you're trying to serve and provide outcomes for, and better support, and being able to quantify and know what that is to then inform what you're delivering is critical to make sure you're delivering the right thing. Doing that in large organisations where often the funding is tied to project-based method, project-based delivery, where you say, hey, you've got to get a statement of work that has these deliverables, and that's all very kind of waterfall-based in how you do it. And so I think there's a tension there that I've still struggled. I've worked in a bunch of places where that tension is very hard to rationalise, and it relies on delivery teams to say, well, we know that we have to fund ourselves and deliver work in a way that conforms with the way that procurement needs to happen, and the kind of objectivity that you need to have with that, but then also rely on the people who are in the delivery teams to say, well, within that framework, how do we still deliver something that iterates on that benefit, communicate that benefit to people, and then make that thing happen at the end of the day. But I mean, the short answer is no, there isn't a great framework to work within at the moment. It relies on the people and the teams to do the work that they're doing.
So you're not using something like SAFE or
not in any formal. I mean, if there was anyone who was a SAFE practitioner and you walked into our organisation today, you wouldn't find it. But there are plenty of teams who are doing agile delivery methods, and doing that in the context of what would be broadly a waterfall kind of procured, like a procurement structure and project structure. And I think it's an unfortunate thing, but in the reality too, we need to make sure that we're spending public money and getting good value for it. And sometimes those it can, without good structure and good people managing those methodologies, it's really easy to lose track of that, right?
Yeah, and I think you often see organisations will adopt part of a framework.
Yeah.
The bits that they like. So you get this water scrum fall thing going on.
What we like to call wagile. Yeah.
Wagile or
Yeah.
fragile.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Patrick, and thank you for your honesty. Which leads me to Karen. So we've had the past, in hindsight, we've had the present, somebody who's actually in the trenches currently, and somebody who was accountable and responsible for doing perhaps the unglamorous part, which is setting up an organisation and a programme for success. Karen, that unglamorous work that makes future transformation possible. We've spoken before, and you've always talked about outcomes rather than process. So what does that actually look like in practice?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. So outcomes rather than process, really, for MSD 2 years ago, went to market for its transformation partner. What was important at the beginning was to think about what the end state looks like, because it really helps ground you in exactly what you want to communicate to the market and how you get across the outcomes you want to achieve. So in setting up the procurement that would lead to the delivery phase of the transformation, it was really important that we understood what the target state looked like, what the current state was, and what the experiences of clients were when interacting with MSD and how they wanted to be in the future. So I think for MSD, before it even went to market, it had a pretty good understanding of the journey it needed to go on. And that was important because without starting at the end, traditionally, we would have gone into a procurement and, designed the hell out of a process that eradicated all certainty and got us a technology solution instead of allowing for uncertainty, going into a discovery period and selecting a partner who can work with us to deliver outcomes that benefit the client. And I think it was that sort of mindset that helped us work through a process that was about finding a partner who would bring great technology, but it wasn't necessarily about technology alone.
So, full disclosure, I was part of that procurement process as a vendor, and there was a lot of talk about partnership as opposed to just pure supplier. How do you determine that in the evaluation room?
So we talked a lot about this would be a partnership, and not just in the sense that people put those words in their RFP because it sounds better than just contracting with the supplier. You're going to go on a multi-year experience with this partner. You want someone where you can have a healthy friction in the relationship, but ultimately you can work through the problems together. So part of the design of our process was to create opportunities for discovery and demonstration. So setting problems and seeing how the suppliers would react to that, sharing information about our world, and then hearing that played back through demonstrations. I think that was all about understanding, can we work with these guys together? Do they get us? Do they get our clients? Do they understand what we're trying to achieve at the end of it? So thinking about the partnership and using the process to get a greater understanding of what that might look like in a delivery phase was really important.
You touched earlier, Karen, on dealing with uncertainty. And, clearly when you're talking about potentially a 7-8 year program, there is a lot of uncertainty because we're not really certain about what's going to happen in 12 months, never mind 7 years. So how do you actually deal with that within the procurement process itself?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because, like I said before, traditionally the procurement process is supposed to take all uncertainty away so you can present something to approvers, to ministers, to central agencies that ties it up in a bow and gives people confidence that you will deliver the outcome that you set out to. But it isn't like that. So in our processes, we set ourselves challenges. We didn't just rely on the written word is more important. But for us, the main part of the process that helped us understand what uncertainty might look like was through the solution demonstration process, helping us understand what choices we would have to make, what challenges would be before us, just in the legacy and heritage world, which Jeremy will know very well. So we had to accept that there was lots of uncertainty, and I think it's more important about being flexible on the delivery. So coming to the end of a procurement process, we should, yes, have certainty on the partnership and the consortium that we're going to be working with, but how that will evolve, probably best to allow an amount of flexibility in there, because you will discover problems you did not anticipate in the way, along the way. And that goes right through to the contracts that you end up with and things like that, and best to allow space for that flexibility, space to change and pivot, and sometimes big pivots.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Hey, the whole sort of tone and subject of this conference is the courage to deliver. So I'm going to put each of you on the spot very quickly. All right. Can you give me one example where you've actually had the courage to deliver, where you've actually had to make an uncomfortable decision, and what was the outcome? And I don't know who would like to start first. Go on then, Shanil.
I'm happy to go. I've had many a courageous moment through business transformation. I think it. One of the. I don't think I can speak about this publicly, so I'll ask for forgiveness later.
You're among friends, Shanil. You're among friends.
So one of the kind of the critical challenges that we had through one of the releases was across KiwiSaver. We had some very strict criteria around what would give us assurance of that all of the customer records were moved over, all of the financial records were moved over, and so on and so forth. And KiwiSaver was the one product that gave lots of sleepless nights for myself and the CFO at the time, as well as all the committee. So, but we got through it. And that's part and parcel of so some of the things that you've got to do. It's not easy. But when you think about the greater outcome of kind of the services that you could offer, sort of post, with KiwiSaver funds moving within hours of the money, kind of of the filing coming through, and so on and so forth. That's the outcome that you kind of go through the pain for. Thank you, Patrick.
So I might slightly see if I could slightly twist your question a little bit, in that this is not something that we have done, but I think if I compare, so what we're doing with the work with the Shared Digital Health Record right now is it was preceded by a very large program of work called Header, which was a big transformation that was announced a couple of years ago by the and worked on through several years, which was designed to kind of do essentially what we're trying to do, but at a much larger scale. So it was designed to connect up all these information systems, deliver new user interfaces for patients and clinicians, set information standards and models for how you shape data and what it looks like, set up new privacy and security requirements and new contracting models for primary care providers and all sorts. Very big hero story stuff. Big. And a really exciting energy to get behind. The trouble is, I think we found was that project tried to do too much too quickly, and it was, or at least too much at the same time. And one of the things that we're doing quite differently here, and I guess this is part of where the courage part of your question comes in, is all of what Header was promising is still needed, but trying to deliver that all at once is a recipe for you to get stuck in thousands of little problems that then build up to just be a whole lot of big problems. And so what we're doing with the shared digital health record is instead to say, well, look, we actually know that today clinicians are used to seeing data that's in varying states of quality. They know that they can get information from this place and this place and this place, and that place has kind of got some stuff that might be useful, but a bunch of it isn't. Or that they all use different ways of recording the same information. So your weight in one system might be recorded in a different way to it is in a different system. Hero was trying to solve all of that with a consistency first before making it available. And one of the key decisions that we made quite early on with this piece of work is to say, well, no, actually there's a current state expectation about how data is managed. So let's not try and fix that. Let's first just actually make it available. And the benefit for that from my perspective is it creates a impetus to get stuff done. Because there's a real tendency for us to go, oh, no, we need to wait just a little bit longer. We need to make sure that this bit's right. We need to do this other thing. And there's a bit of an adage within, startup culture to say, if you're proud of the first thing you ship, you've waited too long. And I think that's a little bit true here, right? Like, you've got to make sure that you can't cut corners and do things that are improper, but you've also, there should be things you wish you'd done before you shipped the first thing, when you ship the first thing, because if you haven't, you've waited too long to prove that what you're doing is valuable. And that's and the other thing that I think is really powerful out of this is it also creates an environment where we know that the data quality in some of this shared digital health record stuff is going to be bad, because we know the systems where it comes from, it's also bad. But for me to go out and tell the sector, hey, you need to code your data better, at the moment they're like, look, we're so busy doing other stuff, we don't have time for that. But when we put that data back in front of them again and they go, gee, that's rubbish, we go, well, yeah, we know. So here's a motivation for you to fix it. And so I think that's, from a courage point of view, the hard thing about that is being able to decide what's important now and what isn't. Yeah. And that's, we can't make things worse. Absolutely, that's the flaw. But how much do we have to make things better before what we've made better is actually worth it? And that's, I think, a key distinction between what we tried to do before and what we are doing now, is we've taken something, narrowed it down as tightly as we can, and even then it's still blooming hard. But, it's that yeah. Yep. That would be my answer to your question, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Karen?
And courage, really, I guess, I'm thinking about, I wish in a way we were more courageous with the approach we took to the market. I talked before about thinking that you want to eradicate uncertainty and ensure the risk is either transferred or shared. Well, actually, none of those things are ever true. You never transfer risk. The government agency will always carry that. There will always be uncertainty. So we spend a lot of time, and, a lot of senior folks and suppliers participating in a process. We spend too much time in the written form. AI is making that less and less relevant. So it would be great if we'd have increase the dial even more on how much we spent in terms of writing requirements or evaluating responses to working alongside potential partners to work through those partnership questions, and of course the technology solution as well, but how effective that partnership could be together. So yeah, that would be my thought.
Okay. Thank you. So if I was, before questions from the floor, if I was trying to sum that up, so I'm looking at you, Shanil, now. So the pass says it can be done. It's not easy. It's not smooth sailing. It needs resilience and it needs courageous conversations along the way. But that complexity can be dealt with, and we can get the outcomes that we need. Patrick, from what you're saying, it's the keep things small and manageable, and don't try and deliver nirvana from day one. It's the old adage around, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, although I think the real question is, why the hell do you want to eat an elephant? But it's actually about keep it small, and also bring the sector with you, because I think you were talking about that. And Karen, it's the groundwork. It's about picking your partners carefully. It's about dealing with uncertainty, putting as much certainty as you can, but dealing with uncertainty as you go forward. And I take it that's around the business case and honesty and complexity again, and acknowledging that it's actually the partnership that will get you through this at the end of the day. It's how you deal with your suppliers and your vendors and your internal teams to get the outcome that you need. Thanks, Ed. Roger, I don't know if there are any questions coming from the floor.
Look, thank you, Steve, and thank you, panellists, Karen, Patrick, and Shanil. That they're quite hard questions, but they're really good questions that are coming. And as the facilitator, Steve, has asked, I'm going to continue in that same vein. And I'm going to start from the top to the bottom this time around. Transformation doesn't end. We procure a big bang, fixed time overhaul, and then launch and leave and move onto the next agency. We'll come back and deal with legacy in 10 years' time. People age and grow daily, not in bursts. How do we have a sustainable, ongoing, iterative improvement without KPMG? Well, I'm not sure I should say that, but I did. But it was asked, so I'm saying it. Now, this is an open question to any or all of the panellists. Steve, you can guide us if you want.
I'll have a go.
Sure.
I'm sure you. Look, it is. I've talked about you go on this journey with the partners, and at the beginning, the relationship isn't always equal in terms of capability or knowledge or experience, and you might lean on them heavily to start with the suppliers or partnerships that you've picked. But part of the agency's journey through the transformation is to start shifting that balance, because you need to be able to take hold of that product and everything that's required of it for its, however long you intend to keep it. And for transformations, it's often generational. You need to start thinking about how you shift that knowledge. Now, MSD is on that journey, and I know that is something they are thinking about, but it might be interesting to hear.
It's something that we've put a lot of thought into. We've had a significant investment in IR. We've got a critical asset that we've kind of built. So how we think about the longevity of that asset is super key. Both from a systems perspective, but also from a services perspective, as kind of technology moves along. So, IR kind of functions within a wider ecosystem with sort of, we've got a bunch of tech companies around tax and payroll, but also our sector colleagues who also kind of lean on some of the data that we collect. So, part of the thinking that we do is sort of, what does a long-term plan look like for what the asset we've built? So we've got a 15-year plan. Now, that's a plan. Everything can change, but our exec are acknowledging of that. But what's super critical is what are we not willing to negotiate on? So as long as you're clear on what you're not willing to to negotiate on, then all of the other parts of the plan can kind of move around that.
Awesome, thanks, Shanil. I know that we're pushed up against the lunchtime break, but I'm just going to ask a couple more questions. Patrick seemed to be talking about minimal viable product. When delivering a product or service that would benefit from data cleansing, for example, how do you reconcile the knowledge that the funding for those additional benefits isn't awarded or is pulled?
Yeah, great question. And that was, I guess, was going to be related to the last one as well. Part of the, you could buy something, and quite often you'll write the investment case. You say, here's all the capex we need. We're going to ship this thing. But what you miss is what's the thing required to operate it, and how do we make sure that the people who are going to operate it are not just people who are going to answer the phones when someone has a question or troubleshoot when there's a problem with the software, but what's the process for managing improvements as we go along? Who's going to look after those? How is that going to get prioritised, and where's that funded from? And that OPEX cost or that operating cost is something that's really easy to miss, and it's really easy to misforecast. And so one of the things that we've been trying to do with the work that we're doing is working really closely with the clinical staff that we have to say what is okay from a data point of view and what isn't, and then how do we, and when creating those forums that can exist beyond the life of the project that go once all of the contractors have left the building and no one's there anymore, who's looking after reviewing that information and making sure that it's right. So that's
just thank you, Patrick. Just one more perhaps for Shanil. This one's quite a good one, I thought. Whether we like it or not, the public service is highly optimised to respond to constraints rather than take risks. do we need to use the system dynamic to drive change using well-designed constraints, e.g. rules around governance, architecture, security and identity? Shanil, would you want to just do that one?
That's a big...
Yeah, it was a big ask, so I can repeat it again. But I guess I just want one plug for IRD here, having I've worked for it and worked in the KiwiSaver industry. It's probably one of the unique organisations in the world for tax. Not only does it do tax, it does social benefits, it's a bank, it does transfers, it collects through the central administration system all the KiwiSaver contributions, which is why I know of it. So it's a big, big organisation, and I think we've got to really give credit to both the teams, as Shanil's touched on in the leadership in that IR space, to have gone through that journey with such a complex beast in terms of a taxation office. Sorry, with a plug there for you.
I think I'm, just to kind of, I wasn't quite sure what if I kind of fully followed the question. Sorry. I mean, like from an IR context, it's I think being in a transformation program is actually quite nice because there's a command and control structure sort of in place. What's more important is kind of how we come out of that transformation journey and how you then interact in a more BAU state, because then you don't have that kind of massive scaffolding of what a transformation program is. You don't have all of all of the support, the help, the contract and like kind of all of that capability. So what's important is sort of how do your governance structures, how do the things that you do well like kind of last and evolve, and that's been something that we've kind of been super critical, super focused on, is sort of all of those good things that sort of made you successful in sort of what you did, being a consistent theme for how you kind of carry on. Is something that we've been very focused on.
Awesome. Hey, look, we're just going to call it there. Just a big thank you to Steve, Patrick, Karen and Shanil. Great questions and a really good and engaging play on transformation. So I ask you to put your hands together for them. Thank you very much.